Welcome to my channel. In this video we will talk about capacitor. They come in different shape and value. First of all, we will talk about their type. We found here the ceramic capacitor. They have a low value in picofarad. Then we can find the film capacitor, and then we found those are not polarized, and then we found the electrolytic capacitor, and they are polarized. We have here the minus and the positive, and we can find also the supercapacitor. We can find also the variable capacitor. They are used in tuning to get the right station. And we have the small one, the trimmer. We can vary the capacitance. They are used in high frequency circuit. A capacitor is formed by two metallic plates separated by an insulator. This insulator has the electric constant epsilon naught. So here we have the first plate and the second plate and the insulator between them. It can be air or a plastic, dielectric plastic sheet or a paper. Now we will measure the capacitance of this capacitor. I will use this meter. It has a dedicated input for the capacitance for low value. For example, this one, it has 27 picofarad. We can measure it here. Here we read 30 picofarad. I will now put the leads of this capacitor. And here we see that we have 7 picofarad. I can change the electric. This is the thin plastic. You can see here we have 12 or 11 picofarad. The formula is the capacitance is equal to epsilon naught multiplied by the area of the plate and divided by the distance between the two plates. This is the distance between the two plates. This tester can't measure the low value capacitance. With this one, it can read here 27 picofarad, but when I put this homemade one, it can't detect the capacitance. Now for unknown part. Maybe it's not more sensitive. We can test this one. It's a bigger one. This one is. We can measure this one. It's 40 nanofarad. So, in order to get a more value, we can play on the dielectric constant or in the distance or in the surface of the plate. For the electrolytic one, they use foil and they put insulator between them, and then they roll them to get the cylindric shape. Now we will talk about different type of capacitor and their uses in the electric circuit. First we have the filter capacitor or the smoothing capacitor. It's used to smooth or filter the rectified voltage from the bridge rectifier to get a smooth voltage. Without the capacitor we have this form of wave, and with the capacitor we have a constant voltage. In the switching mode supply we have the secondary, we have the Schottky diode, and we use the electrolytic capacitor, 2 or more 1, to smooth the voltage. And we get the bypass capacitor. The bypass capacitor is connected near the microcontroller. Here we have the microcontroller with its power supply. Near the microcontroller we move the bypass capacitor to smooth the power supply. Here they are the bypass capacitor. Here we have the smoothing capacitor or filtering capacitor for the primary, and here we have the filtering capacitor for the secondary. Here we found the filtering capacitor here. With one diode rectification we have more ripple here, and with 4 diode we have less ripple. We have a smooth output DC voltage. Capacitors are also used in DC blocking. For example, here we have this circuit. We can find this DC blocking capacitor. The transistor is biased by this resistor, and we block the DC voltage from this part. We need only the sound that passes from this microphone to the transistor. So we put the capacitor to block the DC voltage. If we have a circuit with this output signal, for example here we have 9 volt, for example, and in the input we need only a 3 volt or a low input for the power amplifier. So we put the capacitor here, and the output we have only the signal. We block this DC value here. We have only the audio signal. Also we found a DC blocking capacitor. We have here the audio amplifier and here the input. Capacitor also used for signal filtering. Here we have the RC filter that pass only low frequency. We can use inductance and capacitor to pass the low frequency for the boomer here and the high frequency for the tweeter. We can find here those inductance, so inductor, and the capacitor. Those used in audio filtering, they are not polarized. Capacitor also used in RC and LC circuit. We can use this circuit RC as a timer. If we apply here a voltage in the input and we have in the output, if we apply a voltage in the output we have this signal. In this period the capacitor will charge until it reaches the input voltage, and this time is 5 tau, with tau equal to R multiplied by C. And for the LC circuit we put an inductor in parallel with the capacitor to get a tuned circuit for oscillator. For example, in this FM transmitter we found here a variable capacitor from 2 to 20 picofarad with this inductor. They make a tuned oscillator. Here we have the variable capacitor. Of course we must use a plastic screwdriver to adjust the frequency. The variable capacitor is made with two plates. Made with two metallic plates with half a circle, for example. This one and this one. We vary the common surface to vary the capacitance of the capacitor. Here we can find another type of the variable capacitor. You can see the half of the plate when I rotate. It's called a trimmer. This one also a trimmer. It's variable capacitor. We can find here two variable capacitor used. Here we have the minimal value, and when they get the most common surface, we have here the maximum value of the trimmer. So we can vary the frequency. We can vary the frequency transmitted by this transmitter by varying the capacity. Also we can find the suppression capacitor. Those capacitors are used to suppress the high frequency noise. We use X class between live and neutral, and the Y class between live or neutral with ground. This is the ground. So they put CY here and CX here. Also, we can find the RC snubber circuit. It's used to protect the transistor from high voltage or current here in switching power supply. Here we have a capacitor to protect those MOSFET. Here we have the suppressing capacitor here to the ground, and those between live and neutral. They must use class X capacitor here. Also we can use a capacitor as a voltage dropper in this capacitive power supply. We use the impedance of the capacitor to drop the voltage in order to get a low voltage here. We must use a class X2 capacitor with a resistor and diode. Here we have the Zener diode to limit the voltage, and here we have the smoothing capacitor. This power supply is not safe. We found the main here in all the circuit. It can't output much current, only a few milliamp. here, for example, it's used here for this PCB. It's for a coffee machine. We have here the capacitor, some diode for rectification, and here the smoothing capacitor. Here the triac to control the heater. We found here the microcontroller and the memory. All the parts here are left, so be careful if you use this type of power supply. At the end, we found those capacitor for synchronous motor. They are called run capacitor. Their purpose is to give us a other phase here. We have only two phase, live and neutral, and with this capacitor we have another phase to get the field rotating. So here we have the rotating magnetic field in order to get a rotation in this rotor. They are not polarized and they have a lifetime. For example, this one, it works with 400 volt and 10,000 hour. If you found your motor or your gate motor or your water pump not running, it's mostly because this capacitor value dropped. Over the time, they become, the capacitance drop and the motor found difficulty to start. So now if the capacitor is good or not, we must measure the value. Here, for example, it marked 6 microfarad. We can measure. Here we found 6 microfarad. This one, for example, 14 microfarad. The bigger the value, the bigger the power of the motor. 14 microfarad. This one, they said 4 microfarad. So if we measure this one, we found only 2.7. So this is a bad capacitor. This one is used for small fan. 1.5 microfarad. We can see here 1.5, though it's good. So now we come to the end of this lesson. Thanks for watching and have a nice time.